Oftentimes, we get hung up on the physiological benefits of some of the things we do, when in fact, many, if not most of the benefits, simply come from the following: doing hard things. Doing things that are hard changes your relationship to struggle, to pain, and to challenge. And that will change everything for you. So do hard things for the simple fact that they're hard. Watch what happens. This right here, I'm going to sound like an old man, but this is real wisdom, real wisdom. And
it's a lost art.
As I, the deeper I get into this and the more I understand it, the more I understand people like my father and his father and my relatives, my older relatives who grew up very, very hard, and how they are just happy and joyful, and when they're doing really hard things, don't seem to like trip out. And then I do things that are like, a quarter of the challenge, and I'm like ready to kill myself. And really what it is that their relationship to these things is completely different.
Changes your perspective.
And it's because they did hard things all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. When he likes to tell me this story when I was a kid. When I was a kid, when your dad tells you stuff, you're like, whatever, Dad. The whole like I used to walk uphill 15 miles both ways type of deal.
I love those stories. Yeah.
He's like, when we were kids, obviously we had much better off than he did. He grew up extremely poor. And, we'd get toys for Christmas and stuff. And then he'd do the whole lecture and he's like, you know what I used to play with? They're like, what? And he goes, I used to play with sticks. Like, what? I used to play with sticks. He goes, I had one toy when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what was it? And he goes, he tells us over and over. He found a bicycle tire.
He found it. It was
a bicycle rim at like
a
dump.
Kid that like rolls it with a stick, I guess, like down the street.
It was his favorite toy. They would roll it and they'd play with it all the time. And I remember as a kid thinking like, he's making that up. That's not, you couldn't possibly have fun. But, and again, I'm not trying to trivialize anybody's challenges, but doing hard things does have an effect on how you handle challenge. And, one way to do this is start the day off with something hard or challenging. Everything else seems easier. So if you ever wonder, because I often wonder how some people can go through things and other people can go through the same things and just have a completely different experience. It's not that they, this person feels more pain, this person feels, they have a different relationship. There's the objective thing that's happening, and there's a subjective experience of what's happening. And that right there is probably everything.
I mean, it's almost like a psychological muscle, right?
Totally.
Like you're building it, you're strengthening it by introducing almost this hormetic stress, like just like little bits of really challenging things. So that way too, like you get something real and you don't completely go into shock and freak out and think that the world's ending. It's like, okay, I've navigated through some of these hard things before, and this is how I got to like pursue through this.
Yeah.
It was this way of thinking that shifted my perspective on my childhood. And it didn't happen for me until like my mid to late 20s. And I wish I remember if it was the therapy that I was going through or it was talking to a client. But I know I was like having to dig into like my old, like the way I grew up and everything, and then what led to today. And I remember the more I had to talk about it, the more I realized that like, oh man, because of the adversity as a kid, once I got to adulthood, the challenges, just like everybody has their struggles and challenges when you get into adulthood, seemed so trivial in comparison. Mm-hmm. And it made me realize like, oh, because I was forced to go through these hard things when I was younger, the adult things that I went through seemed, oh, this is not a big deal. Yeah. I've been through harder stuff that's way harder than that many more times. So this is like one little bump in the road. And I never, when I was going through that, I didn't realize I had that perspective. I gained that perspective unwillingly as a kid, but it served me so well as an adult. And so now like the way I frame my childhood is like, man, I'm so grateful. I wouldn't change anything about it. I'd rather go through that. And I think in today's time, because of technology, because of the ability for so many more people to have, we've lifted so many more people out of poverty today than say 3 decades ago, that more and more, I think it's important that we force ourselves into these challenging things, which we've speculated before, that this has a big deal to do with the rise in like Spartan races and things like that. Is that deep down, I think we want that, we seek that, we need that. So to have perspective for
and just to support you, Adam, you're one of the most resilient people I know. So I know you're not, for anybody listening, he's not just saying that for the show. Like I know him, I've seen him go through things, and the guy's extremely resilient, and it comes because of how you grew up. An important thing to mention with this is because it's like exercise, right? Physiologically, you stress your body, it gets damaged, but then it strengthens and becomes stronger so that next time that same damage doesn't cause damage. But you can over-apply damage and overcome your body's ability to adapt. So this can happen with challenge as well, because there's somebody listening right now that's like, oh no, I went through some trauma and it didn't make me stronger. If anything, it made me weaker. Well, there's always a right dose, and that dose is different from person to person. And as you progress, that dose can change. So you can definitely overcome your ability to grow and strengthen from hard things. Now, back to what you were saying about how modern society, and technology has kind of made things easy. More than ever, do we have to choose to put hard things in our life. We have to actually consciously do this, which probably is more challenging than what it used to be in the past, where you had no choice but to go through hard things. Yeah. Like hard things that was life. Life was hard. Now life is just easy. So you have to
set an intention for your day. Like I have to seek out these things that make me uncomfortable. Otherwise, it's not even really going to present itself anymore. Even being in an environment like this where we have like air controlled, like AC, you have heat, you have soft chairs. Like I just can just sit and be happy, play video games. I could put my VR on and just do nothing.
Yeah, but you have to choose it.
By the way, this is the real argument for the cold plunge.
100%.
This is what right now the space is debating back and forth on the science of muscle gaining and growth, which is so crazy and funny to me because what is it? There's something else. Oh, fasting. Fasting is another one of those things that I remember when we first.
It's because fitness, they only value the look. So anything that has all this other value, it might burn body fat, it might build muscle. Let's just focus on that. Yeah. That's what's happening.
Yeah. And I feel like we're doing that again with the cold plunge. It's like, we know that there's value in it, or else it wouldn't be a practice that's been around forever. And we've now got lots of great science that supports all these different benefits that come from it. The one that the fitness science community clings on to is the muscle building recovery aspect of it. And then that gets traction and gets popular. Now there's this counter movement. Now it's this big argument over one aspect of this, and it's not even the biggest aspect, I think, not even the biggest contributor to your life. It's the conversation that we're having right now, which totally reminds me of when the fasting thing happened. Fasting, same exact cycle. It's been around forever. We know that it's been practiced for thousands of years. So we get some science to support the health benefits that support it. So what does the fitness community do? They glom on to the science part of the potential fat loss and neurogenesis and all these things. Yep. And then it's like, and then you have the other people that counter like, oh, that's so splitting hairs and that's bullshit. And then they're all arguing over the wrong thing.
No, listen, fasting is existed in every major religion that exists today. Every major religion has fasting in it. And it's lasted for thousands of years. Were they fasting to get leaner? I mean, we're talking thousands of years ago. Nobody was trying to get leaner.
No.
There was nobody was like, I need to lose some weight. Okay.
Right. In fact, that was probably very high risk to do something silly like that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you want to fast? Like you already kind of fasted last week because we didn't find any food.
We may not.
We're in famine.
Yeah, we might not eat next week.
Right. Cold plunge, like putting yourself into cold water. Do you think that they were doing that hundreds of years ago to speed up recovery or to produce more, catecholamines,
build more muscle,
norepinephrine? Do you think they were debating over the muscle gain? They didn't care about that. They cared about the real value. By the way, exercise and strength training went through a similar path. Strength training initially, nobody cared about the muscles and the look. That was the side effect. It was about the function. It was about feeling good. You read some of these old books that were, from the late 1800s, read about it. Nobody's talking about building bigger biceps or, it's all about more function, vitality, vigor, less pain, not feeling weak, not getting sick. And then, of course, what happens is people notice like, oh, this, Eugene Sandow, he kind of looks really good. Everybody starts worshiping the look. And then we value it for the side effect, for the effect that's not really the main thing. So going into a cold plunge, are there physiological benefits? Yes. There's lots of science now to support it. But here's the real benefit. It's not that I get in and I see catecholamine production and I see immune system boosting, all that. Here's the real value is every time I think about getting into the cold plunge, I don't want to. Eventually, I get over that. If I keep practicing it, I get comfortable because let me tell you something right now. And I'll say this with 100% certainty. Nobody who cold plunges, you don't all of a sudden don't get freezing cold and it doesn't shock you. It always does.
It's hard every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The difference is you develop this resilience and this relationship with it.
mindset.
Where I have to like talk myself into it, but I could see how practicing it every day at some point, I'm just going to do it. And then, God, is that going to have carryover to the rest of my life?
100%.
You better believe it. So if you view your practices with this kind of understanding, even eating healthy is this way. There's definitely value and enjoyment of eating, but there's also the value and enjoyment of not eating the hyperpalatable stuff and enjoyment of eating food because of its other benefits. And by the way, we talk about all the time. That's how you get to this intuitive, balanced eating for the rest of your life. When you go through that challenge and when you understand it that way, now you start to not only get the real value, but all those like silly side effects that the fitness industry worships, like sculpted abs and you look great and you're sexy and your muscles, that all happens anyway. That's all going to happen anyway.
Yeah, and I think in our space, we've been so focused on the body in terms of building and, displaying strength and displaying the benefits of that, and we haven't really dived into building up your mental strength and being able to be resilient, and especially in today's world, I just look at it as like you're reinforcing and fortifying this house before an impending storm comes, right? Like you need to be thoughtful in that regard in terms of being able to keep like mentally strong and when facing challenges.
Yeah. So I'll ask you, Justin, because you played at a pretty high level of football. So, and it's like this for like boxing, for example. You can learn all the techniques. You could be big and strong. You could be fast and agile. But if you've never been hit, there's a learning curve.
Yep.
That comes from being able to have a relationship with getting your bell rung because you got hit in the field. So, and if you've never done it before, you're not going to be able to operate. Just like fighters, like you could practice the moves, you could practice the techniques, you could have it all perfect, but everything goes out the window when you get punched in the face. Unless you practice getting punched in the face, and you know how to roll with the punches, right? That's where that term comes from. I have to imagine football's like that because I can imagine getting hit hard and being like, oh, I got to get used to this.
It's not easy. It's not something that's comfortable. It literally, the first time it even happened for me, because I was late to football where all my friends played Pop Warner and like they were like really understood the game and the physics and really had to apply like the ultimate force towards somebody and like knock them on their ass. And like I didn't know any of this stuff. Like stepping into it, like as a freshman, my parents didn't want me to play until high school, and so I come in a bit late and like all my friends really wanted me to play. I'm like, okay. And I'm out there and I'm just kind of running around with this helmet that's like really heavy and like my neck's soft and I just didn't know what I was doing. And very first play where I was like trying to figure out if I was going to play defense or offense, I was on defense and we were in this drill and this running back who was just, I mean, he was my same size, but just really understood like leverage and just came in and just literally decleated me and hit me so hard. It was like a shock through my whole body. And I was on the ground and it knocked the wind out of me. And I was trying to like gather myself. And I'm like, I could have just cried and just left at that point. Like that, I could have had that reaction.
Well, what is the science behind that? Right. Okay. So both football and fighters, I've heard say this before where like people are asking like, I think I want to get into fighting. And they say that, after the very first time that you've been hit like that. There's a certain type of person that gets hit like that. And is there something is there a chemical or internal or psychological reaction that only certain people, they receive that and it doesn't make them go, oh my God? Because the natural reaction for most people in a situation like that, like we've evolved this way. You get hit, you get hurt like that. The body goes, oh, you don't want to do this.
It's flight.
So what is it about a certain breed of person that gets punched in the nose really hard for their first time ever and they want to come back for more, or gets decleated like that and they go, as much as it hurt, they go, oh, okay, let me do that again.
It's got to be. It's got to be mindset. Like it's.
Do you think it's all that?
It is.
Because here's why I'm not sure about that. Because you just got done,
you might be able to develop it, but
you got done praising me about mine, and I appreciate that. But I'll tell you something right now. When I played football, I was like, this is not for me. And part of what made me go, was getting knocked on, getting rocked like that. Now I was a little kid. I wasn't even at the level. Justin, I was a young kid playing Pop Warner. But it rang my bell enough to go like, I don't want to do this.
I think different challenges pose different challenges for people. Because I can also ask you this: when you get punched in the face, you got a lot of fights when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Did you do the same thing?
No.
So I think it's just different.
Different situations.
Yeah, like you might take an athlete who does that and gets excited, gets like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. You might put them on a stage in front of a crowd, or you might have them take a test.
Yeah, I was just curious if you knew, because
I don't know.
I do know that there is something about that, though, right? Have you not heard? I've also heard the same thing before from like fighters and then football players, and you definitely, if Justin, you grew up in that on the field, like there's definitely guys that went in it with all excited, and then they don't come back, for a reason.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because you'll see that in like different arenas, like in MMA or like kind of martial art or something. Like in some of the schools will test that right away, because they don't want the person with the mindset that is like immediately sort of cowers away and is like not responding the way that they want. They want the one that immediately is like, ooh, like it clicks and fires something inside them.
Yeah.
And so I kind of respect that on a level, because listen, I'm going to put all my effort in and teaching towards somebody that's like that receptive, and I want you to keep learning, versus somebody that's like that you just know, like maybe there's a chance for them down the road to build and develop that kind of excitement and discipline to excel in it, but that's a lot longer of a journey and a path versus somebody like that, where you're like, okay, they have the thing, whatever that thing is.
Yeah, probably, right? Because there's going to be different variances for what they can tolerate and how they progress.
I think it goes back to your dose.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I think that's the important thing. Like if you're listening to this right now, that there's an appropriate dose of stress. So I'm saying do hard things. Well, don't do something so hard that you break your leg and you can't work, or something that's going to overwhelm you or cause
right.
trauma.
There's still a healthy relationship to have with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then there's people that are almost masochistic.
Oh yeah, where they're just hurting themselves at that point.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I got thrown.
Yeah, I was a pain seeker.
Of course. You also delivered
you
it.
Get a little bit of borderline now, let's be honest.
You were also a pain deliverer. I remember the first time I got thrown by a national level judo competitor, and it was definitely terrifying. Well, I mean, you get thrown fast.
Yeah.
The world spins very quick, and then you hit the ground
a hip toss
real hard. I mean, what did he throw me with first? No, he threw me with a taiotoshi, which is a side throw. And if you get it right, the dude turns over very quick. So it was like, boom. And I remember going, okay,
wow.
Yeah, I got to sit here for a couple minutes to catch myself. But I mean, the whole point with this is that there's value in simply choosing to do hard things for the simple fact that it's hard, not just all the other stuff. So like, okay, you brought up cold plunge, Adam. Here's why I like the cold plunge so much. Let's say you're a busy individual. You got a family, you work a lot. You're like, okay, I hear this whole like practice hard things. Like, how do I squeeze this into my day? How do I make this happen? Well, you could actually do this now. They make it real convenient. We work with a company called Plunge, where you could buy a plunge. It's filtered. It takes care of itself. Okay. So you have it in your house, and 2 minutes. You can start your day off with a 2-minute hard ass thing every day, and that's it. And that will have a profound impact on your ability to take on challenges the rest of the day. That's my whole point, with this whole thing.